and welcome back to the IWAR Network Tubecast. I'm your host and NWL and IWL Commissioner Alex G. Along with me, as always, IWAR Commissioner Matt Riley. How you doing tonight, Matt?
I am outraged.
Again?
Yeah, well, I don't know.
What triggered you now?
Oh, I'm just outraged at outrage.
Okay.
So that's all I have right now. I'm just angry and bitter.
So today will be a very special episode. We will be taking a look at some leagues outside the IWAR. So for this episode, we're taking a look at the Jade Dragon League, the New Blood League, the Mid-Atlantic Wrestling Legacy League, Heroes and Legends League, and the Classic Championship Wrestling League. So Matt, I think we're going to start with the JDL.
The JDL. All right, so JDL, the Jade Dragon League. It's on issue number 237. Now, I was excited about seeing the JDL. We kind of researched it a bit before we went up to pick this one of the leagues to look at, because we want you to use these tubecasts that are non-IWAR to kind of get an idea of what might be out there worth checking out. And we saw online the JDL report, and it had some cool imagery, and it was kind of a nice way to put together.
I really liked that report. I thought it was
good. It was slick. It wasn't overdone. It was to the point, but it was kind of fun. Good flair. Colorist engaged. But here we are, holding the bulletin, and there's not a lot of action here. We have 31 cards and a battle royal of about 10 people, which isn't bad. That's actually a good average. There's 2 trash talk submissions. And there's no report, no commission report at all. So I went click. I went on to IWAR.com. I was like, I'll go download the JDL report like I did last time. And damn, it's not there. Now, my first thought is, okay, perhaps, we just didn't do a report this cycle. But usually they don't take it down unless you send a new one. They'll leave it in their rotation of like a month and a half or more. There's stuff on the IWAR main page right now from months ago that if you go through, it's like, oh, all right. So they don't always cycle that stuff through. But there's activity-wise, you're looking at a good amount of activity. As far as the wrestlers go, I would say we're looking at, about, the hell of it, about 77 active wrestlers. That's pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
But when you only have 31 cards, not too bad. It's telling you a lot of 6-man activity in here. You have a lot of stables in here, AOP, Army, Latin, Edge. Yeah, so there's stables in here. So that's they're competing. And again, Jade Dragon is in the Jade Federation. So that's one of those things we talked about in previous shows, that if you want to kind of get an edge on the IWA strats for the report appearance, you want to go to a Jade League because you're going to have 5 Federation worth of drops to play off of.
Yes.
If that all sounded French to you, listen to our other shows.
So I think overall the Jade is a little vanilla right now. I'm kind of disappointed about their commissioner's report because I did really enjoy it. Hopefully it comes back next cycle because I think they could be on an uptick here. In terms of the future, I think it could be a very solid league to go to. I mean, they're not there yet, obviously, but they're improving.
And it's funny, too, is like, you look at league activity, and it's not always a barometer, but a 31-card league, if you're having like 30-plus cards, you're in pretty good shape.
Mm-hmm.
Down in the 20s, not bad. In the teens, you're hurting. Like, you don't want to be in the 20s if you don't have to. You want to be in the 30s and up. Like I always say, the BRL hasn't been below 50 in about 5 years.
Nice.
I mean, it's a powerhouse for a reason. A lot of players, a lot of fun. So when we go to the leagues, you always say, okay, what do we got here? So the JDL's not offering a lot trash talk-wise, but the report was a really fun read. So hopefully it'll come back. But if you were considering the JDL, I would check out, spend $1, check it out, and see if the report has come back. If it hasn't, well, then I would
skip it.
Yeah, so not on my suggestion list. But if you're looking for a league where you can go to and if it comes back, that it's worth it. But again,
definitely worth a look.
Right.
So, all right. So next up is the Heroes and the Legends League. Well, you can tell right off the bat, looking at the title page, they have 2 unclaimed championships. So Matt, why don't you tell us why unclaimed championships are not a good indicator of a good league?
Well, there's a couple of things that shows up. First is it means the battle royal's pretty lightly, engaged. So there's actually 4 wrestlers in the battle royal. Now, if you're in a league like this, you want to be in the battle royal because there's a good chance you're going to win a title. Because those unclaimed titles means that 4 wrestlers who actually on the front page here, 3 wrestlers from the battle royal. So the TV champion took the league title. So the first winner of the battle royal, Hawkeye Science, took the Cosmic Singularity champion, which makes it so much easier. Yeah, rolls off the tongue. I just love it's like Atlantic Central Dixie, Insane Junior Heavyweight Champion. Okay. Blue Ridge Champion, Tennessee, Prairie, like what? What the hell? So there's no real rhyme or reason for that. When I first looked into this, it appeared to be one of those leagues with themed classic wrestlers, but I don't think it was. I think it was just more of a heroes and legends as it says, but the names here don't jive at all.
It looks like if it was a themed league, it fell apart, and this is kind of the remnants of it.
Right, yeah. So there's a roaring lion on the cover image, and Dionysus is here, so you get that to go on. But really, not a very active league. It's got 13 cards in a 4-person battle royal, so
no trash talk whatsoever.
Nope, not a bit. So it's a pass for me.
Yep.
And what's funny is someone had emailed me or made a comment on message on Facebook. Hey, how come you guys don't talk down leagues? And we said from the start, our goal is not to bash leagues, but we can't recommend a league either if we don't think it's a worthwhile endeavor.
Yeah.
So this is if it's a thing where you're they're going, oh, I commissioned the HLL and I'm outraged. You know what? Step up your game. Tell us to check it out again, and we'll do another review. But
yeah, absolutely,
this is the thing. We're not gonna sugarcoat it if it's not worth it.
Absolutely. And they're out of the Iron Fed.
Yes.
All right, next up is the Mid-Atlantic Wrestling Legacy League, MWL, formerly the MRL.
Yes.
Now, the MRL back in the day was a powerhouse, correct?
Absolutely. It was one of the, I don't know if all time, but it probably was the all-time strongest league, if you want to call it that. It was one of those leagues. There was a waiting list at one point. It was put together by Brandon Bailey, Jim Gabbard, and Jimmy Davis was involved. But there's other guys too. I'm going to forget, Jack Lamuto, and some other fellas. But basically, the guys that kind of helped make that league great were fans of the business. Some of them were in the business, and it was a throwback league. It was actually the first real throwback league in a sense that it was built around the idea that Mid-Atlantic Wrestling, no wrestlers from I think past 85 could be in the league. Maybe 86 or 87, but basically you had to be, pick a wrestler. And what the MRL way it worked was they had a roster of available names, and you could pick a wrestler name. So if you picked Sexy Stan Lane, you could make him Sexy Stan, Jane or whatever. Had to be a spin, a variation on the name. And what some of these guys did was really fantastic work. Armas Archuleta was this Mil Mascaras type, but he was, he took it even further. Mil Mascaras was never that big here. But if it was comparison, he would be like the Hulk Hogan of that league. It was a great league with a lot of good players and a lot of fun feuds and memories and rivalries at a world title. They put together a lot of the good systems, like the IWAR world title system we use now with 3-point champion advantage. That kind of process was built off of what they created. So it's some long-lasting things in the game, and there are a lot of guys actually in the LWL now that played there back in the day. So what happened basically was this. The powers that be in the MRL kind of passed the torch, and after a while the level of quality deteriorated. The players weren't as many, and what ended up happening was you kind of had a civil war or argument, and there was a point where one of the guys who was championing it just walked away from the game. So there was kind of a what's going to happen next thing. So I got called in with some other players to kind of make one last hurrah, see if we could save it. And on the one hand, it didn't work out ideally. It was kind of a fun little rush. We did have a fun time doing it. It was myself, Andy Connick, Bob Rogers, John Stevenson, and a few other players also got incorporated. And what ended up happening was you had that old style. What we did, though, is we released names. Because what used to happen, and one of the problems with MRL, was that if someone had claimed, let's say, Ric Flair, no one else could make a Ric Flair wrestler. So if you came in and I love Ric Flair, my favorite wrestler, I'm the biggest fan ever. Sorry, dude. And if you wanted Buddy Landel, taken. The BRL's Nature Boy Tommy Landel was from the MRL. That was his like version of Buddy Landell. So you had a lot of different things. And what happened was after a while was people got tired, stopped playing, and those wrestlers were just basically stored. Well, after a certain point, you end up managing like Barry O, because there's no one really good left.
Iron Mike Sharp.
And I remember when I came in, there was this team called the Rage Warriors, like the Road Warriors, like Talon something, I don't know, Animal or some shit like that, I don't know, whatever it was. And I had this whole series of promos where they're walking through junkyards and like there was wrestlers' names spray painted on cars, and they'd help sledgehammers, and then they'd go to a car and just start pounding the shit out of it, and they'd pan back and it would be like one of the wrestlers' names. And it was a cool way to to establish them as a threat, right? And I got this email from somebody saying somebody else was mad at me because I was using their wrestlers. And I was like, are they playing? No. I'm like, then why do they give a shit? Like who cares? And it's sort of like, it's one thing if like, it was, someone using my exact name or whatever. But I took it as, well, I was asked to come in, take over this team. I'm doing what they asked. And then I did, one of the things too is back in the old days, no one could manage Hulk Hogan. He was an absolute ban from the league. He was never allowed. So the first thing I did was like, I'll come in, but I got to manage Hulk Hogan. And it was done because partly was I wanted to manage him on the idea of the timeline. What if he never turned face? What if the Incredible Hulk Hogan, as I called him, Hulk Hogan was a heel and always a heel? And I had an awesome time writing Hulk Hogan. I did a great thing with John had Magnificent Morocco, but he was called something else like Ron Duraco or something like that. And we had this running gag where Hogan was just an absolute bastard. And like he went to a homeless shelter and ate all the food while they waited.
Nice.
And talked about other guys in the league, like getting his scraps. So it was this, I had fun. And it was funny at first. I was like, oh my God. So the other wrestler I managed there was Lasertron. Because he was also an equally shitty wrestler back then. Like, Lasertron was just the absolute worst. He was a wrestler built off a gimmick of a kid's game. Laser tag.
Yeah.
So
poor Hector Guerrero.
I know. Like I lost a bet. So anyways, what we did when we were there, we set up a 4-tiered structure. And it was like international, WWF, NWA, AWA. And you could manage wrestlers from whatever end of the federations. And you worked your way up. But it was a cool thing because it actually was kind of a precursor to what ended up happening with the IWAR. Mm. So in a way, the MRL still kind of showed us ways to play the game a little bit differently. But what ended up happening ultimately was, and I also managed Magnum DJ, which was hysterical because we wrote him off. When I played briefly, we wrote him off in a car accident by the Horsemen.
Nice.
And he was, mysteriously driven off the road in his motorcycle in a terrible accident. And I had this running thing where he was gonna, come back. And when he finally came back, he came out and beat the shit out of Dusty Rhodes.
Nice.
Because he was like, you ever visited me in the hospital? You know who did? The Horseman. The Horseman visited me. And I wrote him as a heel. So it was a fun league to play in because I thought, kind of taking different spins. But what didn't impress me was guys that just totally just basically photocopied what the other wrestlers had done. So I can see where the allure was. So anyways, the MRL, after we kind of had our swing at it, we were like, you know what, we're done. We took our shot, didn't work. Thanks for playing. So it kind of went on for a while, and kind of struggled, and then one of the guys from the MRL past kind of got this movement going of like, let's just retire the MRL. And to be fair, if any league in the IWA deserves to be retired, it's probably the MRL. It was a powerhouse league that had fantastic trash talk, fantastic reports, great, interaction between players, friendships formed. So in a way, yeah, it's great. The problem is what we have now is where we're at now, which is a Middle Atlantic Wrestling Legacy, the MWL. And one of the things that kind of gives this a morbid approach is right there in the image when you look at the front page. And do you see what I see?
But the MRL still has like a tombstone on it? Pretty
much. It's kind of like playing in a coffin, It's like, yeah. Okay. Of course, I will say Mark Shane's destroying the tag team competition. I always love when the IWA will say things like, when you retain a title, like, oh, wins 5 free matches. And then if you retain it again, like, wins another 5 free matches. And it's like, wins yet another 5 free matches. Like, holy shit. There's a lot of wrestlers that are still here that played in the old days. So, for example, you have Maurice Duchesne, Paul the Butcher Duchesne, which were the throwback wrestlers. You had the Von Dams, one-man crew was been around forever. Then what ended up happening too is, and one of the reasons the MRL kind of lost some of its integrity is at one point, and this has to happen eventually, they kind of expanded the era back, like I think it was in 1990, and the old schoolers were like, no. But the problem you had was you only had so many viable wrestlers.
You just ran out of wrestlers.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like if you want to come in and be Colonel De Beers, taken. Jesus, that guy was obscure as all shit. all right, I'll be Tiger Mask, taken. Oh, okay, I'll be Ron Simmons, taken. Jesus Christ, who the hell is left? And that's the thing is all the good wrestlers were taken.
So you end up with jobbers at the end of the day.
Right, and that's the thing. It made it so ridiculous. It was like, well, then if I have a jobber, I'll just go to another league and play there.
Right. Now,
granted, I took Lasertron and played, but I was trying to make it work. We have wrestlers now like Harley Mace. He's been around forever. He's not here anymore, but I always remember Jake the Milkman Milliman, which was a jobber, and someone ran with him. And to his credit, that was awesome. The Crossbows, Jules Gigantic, you see some of these wrestlers in here. Oh my God, someone's managing the Incredible. Is that my guy? The Incredible Hulk Hogan's still there. I think they never took him out.
You might want to transfer him out.
Well, I will say one of my favorite things is a manager who often copies other wrestlers, like wrestlers he likes, and he totally stole my name. It's like, whatever, that's cool. I don't care. It's kind of nice. So MWL, so where we are now. So that's kind of the background history. I sort of rambled about it, but the MRL was really worthwhile. I will say this about the dungeon. I don't mention the dungeon often, but if you go to the dungeon, there are links to old MRL stuff, and you can find it online. I actually might be able to find the links online still. I think there were some outside sites. So what we'll do is I'll look it up after our show, and if we can, we'll feed it into the episode.
But Matt, the state of the MWL right now, I'm looking at these cards.
You mean the whole entire 12 cards with...
It's not even that. That's bad. But the fact that they have cards with 2 matches on it.
Yes. So that means, let's see, 3... taking out the title shots. All right? So 2, 4, 6... Oh, I'm sorry. 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. That means there were 14 matches. That means roughly probably 3 people are playing there.
Shit.
That means, I can tell you, Mark Duchesne's one of them.
Mm-hmm.
Keith Maple's another because he's got Von Dams there. The Noble House is there, and I think he might be part of it because I can't imagine someone, But the really horrifying thing is you look at this, and I don't think there's any wrestlers, like there's a number 1 contender, but there's no other wrestlers ranked. Like, usually you look at a roster and you go, okay, you go down the list and you go, okay, well, this guy's, ranked 3rd, and he's got an 0-4 record, and the guy number 4 has a 500 win record.
Right.
That starts off at number 2. So there's literally no ranked wrestlers. So if you walked in the door here, you'd be the number 2 contender. Now, I'm of 2 minds of this. On the one side, I say, well, the MWL is part of a rich history. But it's the only thing still tying the MRL to anything at all.
Right. You think their legacy and the kind of their gimmick is now what's killing them?
Well, I just think it's I'll talk about the reason I think these leagues don't succeed for the most part is that there is a finite number of wrestlers for one. So if you're going to make now, granted, in the game today, if you're like we start off, you can pick your wrestlers. You always get a guy who's a Bret Hart fanatic. You get a guy who's a Hogan fanatic. You get a guy who's a Flair fanatic. And then again, you're looking at the same exact crop of wrestlers.
I'm a Ronnie Garvin fanatic. He's awesome. He's underrated. Screw you guys.
Oh, I hated Ronnie Garvin. He's a cross-dressing bastard. But anyways, he screwed up the Precious Night.
Yeah.
J.J. Dillon hiding in the closet. That's the best part. The reason I think most of the leagues don't work, to be quite honest, is that it's the talent pool of players. Meaning that players who grew up in that era have either already played and are gone, or occasionally come into the game. Like this game, we find most people that play this game, they...
Like, what's the demographic? What is it, like 25 to 60?
We find most players tend to be over 30.
Yeah.
So even the guys now that are in their 30s, they grew up with like 90s Attitude Era wrestling.
Yeah.
Like they grew up on McMahon as the heel commish boss. And they didn't grow up with blood-soaked cage matches. I mean, maybe the ECW, but way back in the day, and if you want to go hunting on the dungeon, you can probably find it. I proposed putting together an ECW-themed league. And people lost their shit over it. They're like, oh, what? No! How could you do that? I'm like, why is this different from that? It's the same exact concept. You have a limited number of wrestlers. And
like, if you're going to do a league like that today, it would have to be like, oh, we're going to do 2000 to 2010. You know, that's what the league's going to be.
And that's the thing is a lot of the players now, even in their 20s or whatever, or we have returning players, the problem you run into is you only have so many players from who grew up in that era. So, like, a guy now, maybe he comes in, he's a 45-year-old player or a 50-year-old guy who's like, oh, I remember this game as a kid. It doesn't succeed because the people who grew up in that era don't know it. Like, it'd be like if I was like, oh, remember Gorgeous George? No.
Like we're going to do Frank Gotch and George Hancock.
Yeah, like, oh, man, Lou Thez, he was the bomb. No, he sucked. Like, you know, like, you know what you're talking about. So, it's one of those things that I really feel these leagues can be fun, and if they succeed, good for them. But
there's other things you can do now. You can do like an indie league where you can have a list of wrestlers that are on the indie circuit, or an NXT type league that's only, guys under 25.
Right. And my one thing I will say, and this goes back to my IWAR wrestling for the longest time, is I've always strived to have like new wrestlers, concepts, ideas. Like sometimes they come to you, like Luther Alexander is original concept, the crazy, wacky Russian. Like there's never been a guy like that ever, And
he didn't start that way either.
No, and that's the thing. He evolved, but it happens. A lot of these people is they have a certain character idea, and it's just a carbon copy of another character. Yeah. And I'd rather see some new stuff. I'd rather see a new, something different, something engaging. Like when I see some of the wrestlers in MWL right now, it's like, wow, these guys are really cool characters.
They're so good right now.
Oh my god, it's awesome. But I will say that MRL, it's on life support right now. And I think what you're seeing is that, so long as Attaway is making $15 on a league, or I'm thinking like
it's a legacy league too with 200. They're going to be less likely to close down a league that has 200, plus issues.
Like, look at this, okay? There's Stunning Steve Houston, and then 3 guys that Mark runs. So Mark sent 3 guys in the Battle Royal. Although Mark has like $8 gazillion of Attaway credit from the PRL. So. He actually, I think he almost has $600 or more.
Jesus.
He's earned. Which, yeah. Tell me again how the BRL is not the best league in the game. Yeah, buddy. You can play for free. I mean, looking at this, there's so few cards, and there's title matches. I will say this. If you wanted to help a league thrive and try to, earn some cred with the old players, go make the NWL live. But if not, it's going to just close down, and that's going to be the last you ever hear of the MRL, because there's no other reason to bring it back. The only reason I could think of to bring it back is if you brought back, and I believe the last MRL world champion was Magnificent Ron Morocco. I might be wrong, but I think it was Morocco. And he never lost his belt when he was our champion. Is if you bring that belt back and say, we're going to establish that belt as a heritage title for, like, this league. But MRL closed. It would be sort of like Ric Flair's NWA world title. Like, the NWA closed, but you still have the world championship, At
the time, Luther Alexander stole the commissioner's championship from the MMLs.
You son of a bitch. But it's just, it's a hard thing to say because part of me says, let it die out. Just let it go, and it's done. But without a commissioner report, that league's never going to ever be anything.
And a league like that needs a commissioner's report.
It does. And the thing is, too, is, I don't know, I think a league like that is going to be hard to pull off now with the players nowadays. Like I said, they all grew up on Shawn Michaels and Triple H and DX and NWO. They didn't grow up with the Full Horsemen.
Yeah.
Or if they did, it was like the monstrosity version.
Paul Roma.
Ugh, God. All right, so enough of Emma.
All right, guys, this episode went extremely long, so we want to cut it into 2 parts. So join us next time on the IWAR Network Tubecast. Have a good night.